welcome back to Chefnpodcast. Happy St. Patrick's Day. That's what it is. I see my guest has green on. I do not have green on, but just like my kids, they were talking this morning about pinching at school. And if you have green on and somebody pinches you, you get to pinch them back twice. And it's cool to see how some things just never change. I remember all that. Nobody has pinched me yet today because I try to work out and stay tough enough that nobody will pinch me. Plus, the haircut makes me look mean. So, well, welcome back. A little housekeeping. So subscribe and comment out there in podcast world. And then, you know, the comments, I want to keep them coming in. They've been good. I think most of them are my family and friends. So I want some real comments out there because maybe we'll do a host show on comments one day. But all that aside, we have an amazing guest today. This is round 2 of doing a podcast with a guest you've never met before. So I'm really excited about this. It's going to be a great time. This individual, she's a Swedish American who grew up between DC, Ukraine, and Turkey, and spent most of her childhood learning about people and places through food. I mean, that doesn't sound terrible, does it? So eating and cooking were her first loves. Eating was my first love. Cooking came much later in my life. And then, I mean, she even threw a dinner party, first time ever, family and friends, in 2000 when she was 8. So moving from there, professional food experience came in. She worked for a small-time chef named Jose Andres. You know, ever heard of him? He's kind of got a few restaurants around as a line cook there. And then from there, really branched out and got into more of the marketing and communication side of things. So I think it's awesome because it just shows how we can branch out from the line cook role or the chef role. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But she worked for Bolton Company, Major Food Group, and DIG. Most recently, she was second in command for Wicked Good Media. I mean, all sorts of restaurants, Panda Express, Camilla Marcus, Farmer's Fridge, all these things were kind of underneath her. And now she is the founder and CEO of In the Wings. And so I'm going to let her tell us about that. I want to welcome Daisy Zeijlon. How you doing, Daisy?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me and for such a lovely introduction. I'm feeling so good about myself.
It's the best, isn't it? When somebody reads your bio, you're like, yeah, unless it's a crappy bio. Like, you know, people start with mine, like, started at Waffle House. Like, well, okay, I did.
No, I think we need to have more moments instead of just like weddings and funerals when people say nice things about you in front of an audience.
I agree. It does. It kind of sets you up for the day. Like, yeah, okay, I can go on about
exactly.
my day today. Yeah, no, it's great. Well, hey, welcome. I appreciate you coming on today. Thanks for the time. I appreciate the green for St. Patty's Day. You know, nobody's pinching you. So good stuff. So if you're familiar with the setup here, we've got some on-the-fly questions to really dig in and just talk about you and who you are and what makes Daisy tick. So are you ready for the on-the-fly questions?
So ready.
All right, let's do it. You look so ready. You're like, I'm ready. I'm done. All right. Cats or dogs?
Cats. Easy.
All right. That was all right. Maybe the next one will stump you. So Scottish cuisine, Ukrainian cuisine, Swedish cuisine, or Turkish? Yeah. See, first one's easy. Second one gets you.
I know, because second, I had a teacher in high school who was so horrible, and he would design these tests where the multiple choice, the answer could be any one of them or a combination or all of them. And so I feel like I want to employ that technique now and be like all of them.
You can say it's your on the fly questionnaire. If you want to do that, you can.
You know, I would, of course, say all of them. They all are important to me, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I think today and in this moment, I have to say Ukrainian food, given what is going on in the world, right? And here in New York, where I am, there's been and all over the country, I think there's been such a movement to really spotlight Ukrainian chefs and cuisine and food and support. So we'll say Ukrainian food today.
All right, cool. Next, favorite non-food related hobby?
This is really going to make me sound extremely old, but but it has to be knitting.
Really?
Knitting is my favorite non-food related hobby. I also recently taught myself to darn socks, which is another, seems like a very old school hobby, but it's so useful, you know?
It's kind of like cooking, right? I mean, so many people have lost that art of how to throw a meal together with anything that's in your pantry, your refrigerator. And it's, once again, it's a very useful, it's a hands-on technique that you can do throughout your life. Knitting, darning socks, all those things, very useful, right? When the whole system collapses and people need socks, they're going to be knocking on Daisy's door like, hey, give me some of them socks, right?
Yeah, side hustle. I'll repair your socks for you.
That's awesome. Yes, we're going to have the sock podcast coming up. I see it happening. All right. So now this one, I had Coney Island or Brooklyn Flea as a question of where you'd rather go. But I know nothing about New York, so I was just researching like best places to go, whatever, and kind of do. I just want you to tell me best place to go in New York City. Your best place. If you just like said, somebody said, here's $1,000, go have fun today, where would you go?
Okay. $1,000, have fun today. Honestly, with summer coming up, I think that I probably would start the day in Coney Island. I think it's so underrated. I think that people think it's not cool anymore, or that it's old school and touristy and whatever, but I love Coney Island. I think it's such a nice, like, New York energy. You can really feel what it was like, you know, a century ago. And the hot dogs are so good. They're expensive. So I would be grateful for the donation of $1,000 if I'm spending like 12 on a hot dog.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, we have now a ferry system here. And I love being on the water. When you get reminded that New York City really is a coastal city. And so taking the ferry to Coney Island, getting my hot dog, going on a ride, getting some sunshine. And then I would make my way back to my favorite restaurant here, which is Keen's, which is a steakhouse that opened in the 1880s. It's been around since then. And I could take my remaining, $990 and very easily spend it there.
Yeah, it's $1,000 does not go like it did 100 years ago, right? At
No.
Coney Island, you'd be able to buy Coney Island. But all right, great answers. I love that. I love that I was kind of close to being on there with Coney Island. Cool. I know nothing about it. So, all right, now this one. One kitchen utensil for the rest of your life. You can only have one more, and that's it. What would it be?
I think what I would pick, I have this whisk but it's small. It's not tiny, but it's small. And instead of metal, like the whisk part is silicone, or it's covered in silicone. So it still has the structure, but I can use it on non-stick and any like delicate surfaces. And it just is such a good all-purpose tool. So I think I would take my like mid-size silicone whisk.
I love it. That's the first whisk answer I've gotten. Really good. Whisks are very underrated. I love a good whisk.
Yeah.
All right. So, worst kitchen disaster you've ever seen? As in, like, somebody spilled 10,000 gallons of stock or, whatever.
Oh, that is a great
Or it could be restaurant disaster, because you deal with we're talking like restaurant groups here. So if you had like a restaurant that just totally failed, not you personally, but if you had something like that, that'd be another great story to hear.
Yeah, I have an interesting one, which was a problem that I hadn't really thought about before this came up. But I was working with a client with a restaurant doing like PR communication stuff for them a few years ago. And it was a big, really snazzy opening, really well funded, big, like more than 100 seats. And it was beautiful, like architecturally designed, open kitchen. And it opened and it was, pat myself on the back. It was packed from the minute that it opened. But like a week or so into opening, they started getting flooded with noise complaints because it was such an open, the kitchen was open, the dining room was open, and there were no partitions anywhere. There was nothing to buffer the sound and huge glass windows, so people were complaining, we can't hear each other, we're not going to come back. If the food tastes good, but we can't actually hear each other. And so then what ended up happening is that they had to, they did all of the tricks we all know, padding under the chairs, padding under the tables, pillows, plants, all of that. But what they ended up doing was opening the ceiling back up, spraying 3 inches of sound insulation foam, and then closing the ceiling back up. And it cost like 30 grand.
Oh my gosh. Oh my word. And restaurant openings right there, it's like you're already out of money. Like the last thing you want to do is go drop another 30K on noise.
Seriously.
Wow.
That was pretty bad. I mean, no one was hurt. Nothing was really like wasted. It wasn't a kitchen disaster, but it was painful in a different kind of way.
Oh, and that's so funny because doing restaurant openings, like it's such a moving, living thing that nobody really realizes unless you've done it before and open a restaurant and you go, oh, well, I never thought about noise, and just like, but it makes for that whole experience. And so that's pretty funny. I mean, not for them, but for our audience, it's hilarious.
It's been a couple of years, so it's funny now.
Yeah, it's funny now. It's been plenty of time. Okay. Sweet or savory?
Savory.
Savory? All right. You looked like you were disappointed with your own answer there, but that's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Tacos or pizza? Boy, I'm hitting you with the hard ones today. I'm sorry.
I did listen to my friend Manny, who was your previous guest, and I listened to him struggle too. So I don't know why I'm not more prepared.
It's great. I love it.
I think I'm going to say tacos.
Tacos. Okay. Favorite place you've ever visited? Yeah. Tough questions. I know. It's a Thursday. It's just tough.
It is tough. Favorite place I have ever visited.
It could be lived, visited, whatever, since you've been a world traveler there.
Yeah. I think that I lived in Scotland. I did my undergrad. I went to college there. So I lived there for 4 years, and it is a place I will forever want to go back to. And so I think that remains my favorite place, I guess, that I have visited.
If that's where your heart goes, and that's what.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, on the flip side of things, what is a bucket list place that you want, where you would like to go?
I feel like this is a big question when we've all spent the last 2 years like fantasizing about travel.
I'd like to go outside my apartment, please.
I know. But I think right now, my husband and I are really talking about, we had a wedding during COVID, and so we didn't have a honeymoon, but our original plan was to go to New Zealand. And that's like, as soon as I have the time and the ability to go on like a long trip to somewhere, I really, really want to go to New Zealand. And while I'm over there, I would love to go to Australia. I have a friend who just had a baby, and I would just love to spend a good chunk of time in that part of the world.
I agree with you on that one. We actually have a trip that my wife earned to Australia, and it was supposed to happen in 20, of course, and it's 22. And we just heard like maybe it'll be coming up, because oh my gosh, how awesome would that be? I would love to go there.
Yeah,
but New Zealand too. I think I missed the boat on that one. Okay, so going back through these cats, you said that was the easy one. That was the easiest question I threw at you there. So tell me why you picked cats over dogs.
I always have had cats. I grew up. My parents, their firstborn really was a cat. Like before I was born, they had a cat, and I just always have grown up with them. I have a cat now who is just a demon. He like constantly is, I think he has felt cooped up over the last couple of years as much as we have, but they're just something with dogs. It's so easy to get their affection.
It is.
And yes, with cats, I always feel, even now, like my current cat, he's 7.5, almost 8. So I've had him for a long time, but he still, when he comes and sits on me, I feel like I just have like won the lottery. It's like, wow, I must have been so good today. He still loves me. So I think it's like partly just habit and comfort, and it's what I grew up with, and also just something about their attitude that I love. Plus, where I am now in my life, they're just a little lower maintenance. It's easier to travel, easier to be out of the house. You can leave them, but I still love dogs. You know, I like being a dog aunt. So many of my friends have dogs.
I don't think I've ever heard that term. So we are dog people at our house, and I've never been a cat person ever. And I think it came from my dad, just like beating it in me that cats were demons, like you said. So you've got a love-hate relationship with your cat. You love it and it hates you. I mean, that's kind of how I've always seen your relationship with cats. So we actually had one when my son was younger, and litter box and all the things and the stuff, and that was the only time we've had a cat. So okay, all right, what's your cat's name?
Hamish.
All right. So we actually have a Fozzie. Fozzie's our dog now, and Minnie. Yeah, we got a brand new puppy for my daughter. Anyway, all right, so you picked Ukrainian cuisine. I think we kind of went over that of why. I mean, gosh, they're so different too. Scottish, Ukrainian, Swedish, Turkish. I mean, goodness gracious, you've got a lot of food knowledge up there. All right, favorite non-food related hobby. How long you been knitting?
Since I was a teenager. Knitting, I think it's a really underrated hobby. I love it for a few reasons. Firstly, I can't be on my phone while I'm doing it. It like literally occupies both hands. So you can't be doom scrolling the news or Instagram or whatever. It forces you to kind of like, yeah.
So true.
I mean, it's so easy, right? Especially to go on the news and you're just like, and then an hour has passed. So I like that it takes me away from a screen. And also I think that there's something just really meditative about that. I know that lots of people, I don't know if you have hobbies, non-cooking hobbies that are really like working with your hands. I think that there's something really meditative and peaceful. It's just like good for my mental health also to be, and there's something so rewarding, similar to cooking. You make something and then you serve it to someone or you give it to someone. Like I'm working on a blanket for a friend who had a baby. And there's something just so special when you do it and it comes to life and you're just like, you hold it in your hands and it's so rewarding.
Absolutely. No, I totally get it. I've always told people, it's instant gratification as a chef, as a cook, whatever, because you've made that awesome dish and somebody loves it, enjoys it. And then also like you're only as good as your last meal. So you're only as good as your last blanket, right? So if it was a failure and didn't keep somebody warm, which probably wouldn't be the case. But no, I think you're right. To have something to do, like the gym is kind of where I can go and just like let my mind go and not think about anything except not dying at the gym. And so it's you're right, to have something like that that's hands-on that you can do, to not doom scroll. I love that. Like, yeah, I've wasted an hour and I feel so much worse about everything now.
Exactly.
That's great. All right, best place in New York City. And we kind of covered that one too. I think that was cool. I've never given somebody $1,000 to go do anything like that. But now I did virtually, and you did a great answer to it.
Sorry, it's kind of a nice idea. I feel like that would be, I'm open if someone wants to give me $1,000 to go discover New York.
Well, there will not be a check in the mail to you. I'm sorry. But the next thing we went over was the Whisk. And I love that. And for the listeners who don't know, they have these little whisks that are covered in silicone, just the little arms on it, so you can do all sorts of stuff. You can cook with it and use it in nonstick. You can do all sorts of things. So great answer. We've had spoons, whisks, we've had peelers, we've had a few answers on these things. So it's always fun to kind of hear what people have done there. And then it comes to the $30,000 noise reduction. Oh my gosh, what a terrible time. I'm sure. So is the restaurant doing well now?
They closed.
So they're doing better. Yes.
But not because of the sound, just because of COVID. I mean, it was pre-pandemic and it's still open, not in its same iteration. It's the same group, but it is sort of a different concept or restaurant now.
That's I opened a health and wellness restaurant forever ago, and we had a pizza oven, and up above the pizza oven they had, you know, the little fire sprinklers that are in office buildings and things like that with the little rotating disc on the bottom. Well, they have little glass vials in them, and the glass vials are rated for different temperatures. Well, somebody had the amazing idea to put the lowest temperature rating right above the pizza oven. And so within probably 3 weeks of us opening, that thing popped, and we had all the gray water dump on our pizza chef over there. And my sous chef and I, we were literally watching him, and we watched him just get doused in it, and just like, and Jack, the sous chef I had at the time, I always have a sous chef more smart than I was, and he said, "Well, I guess I get a mop." I mean, just as calm as he could be. Like, what else are we gonna do? So it's funny, man. Those kitchen disasters are awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet or savory? And you went savory, and you looked disappointed when you said it. So tell me about savory.
Yeah, let's dive in. So, sweet and savory. I think my initial thought was I love sweets. I love baking. I love dessert. But I guess the way that I was thinking about it was like a forever question. If I had to pick sweet or savory for the rest of my life, I think that I would pick savory. I just, when I was a kid, the idea of eating baked goods for the rest of my life was really exciting. But now it makes me feel kind of sick.
Yes. So I agree.
I can't pound chocolate cake in the same way that I used to. And then also thinking about like my favorite like savory snacks and foods, I went immediately to French fries, and I was like, that's not something that I could part with.
Oh,
so
French
savory
fries,
won.
cake, man. Yeah, savory. It's probably going to be savory if you're thinking about it like that. Great way of thinking about it. I didn't. I was just saying sweet or savory, but cool. Yeah, that's yeah. Yeah, savory is probably it, because you're right. I mean, as much as I like to pound chocolate cake, it's not really a thing that I could do 7 days a week. I could actually, but it's, yeah, that kind of, all right. So on the savory tip, I went the right direction here. Tacos or pizza, and you went tacos. And so tell me tacos. What are we talking? Taco Thursday here, Taco Tuesday. You having margaritas? You doing like traditional tacos? I like to mess with my chef friend in LA and tell him that I make Ortega, or something like that with the flat shells on the bottom, because I'm from Arkansas. We're bougie like that here. So, but yes, what do you tell me about tacos?
I mean, I love a hard shell taco. Like, I think that there's a recipe I use that I think is in the New York Times. It's like called like middle school lunch tacos. And it's like a hard shell, a ground beef mixture, the shreddy cheese, shredded lettuce. And that, I mean, it hits the spot every time. That is so good. And then also running the gamut all the way to traditional tacos. Our first like trip out of the country in a long time was in the fall, and my husband and I went to Mexico, and we went to Mexico City, and it was like game over. I had not eaten a taco until I arrived. It was so good, and there was so much variety. Again, it's sort of the same as the sweet and savory question. I guess I like to have a lot of variety. I like to have foods and categories of foods. I like as much variety as possible. I love pizza. I am a New Yorker. Amazing pizza here, but
you said tacos. I think you're going to have people who are upset with you.
That's okay. I can take it.
That's fine. I'll take them out for pizza. They'll be fine.
Yeah, but I think it's I love both foods, but I think just instinctually the variety of tacos, there's so much interesting history. And I'm speaking of pounding things, tacos is something I really could eat a lot of.
So, I always joke with people. So Arkansas and Texas, we have cheese dip. I don't know if you're familiar with cheese dip.
Queso?
No, ma'am.
No.
Incorrect. We have cheese dip. Okay.
Okay, tell me. I don't know about cheese dip.
Cheese dip it's queso, but we have cheese dip here. That's what we have. And we have Arc-Mex. So instead of Tex-Mex, we have Arc-Mex. And we had a restaurant named Mexico Chiquito that opened here, and they had like cheese dip, and it was just queso. I'm sure it was made with like powdered milk, and who knows what they put in it there, but it got Arkansans hooked on cheese dip. And so you can't go anywhere in Arkansas without having cheese dip. You go to the Mexican restaurant down the street, and I live in a town of 60,000 people, and from New York, you're like, wow, we have that in like a square block. But there's probably like 15 or 20 Mexican restaurants here, and they're all exactly the same. And they all serve cheese dip, and they have free salsa when you walk in the door, and that's just what you're accustomed to. Until you go anywhere else in the country, and you go, "I'll take a cheese dip." They go, "I'm sorry, what? What are you asking for?" So I'm with you on the taco side, on the Mexican side, and I do love the how you kind of went through. Look, there's this classification of taco, and then there's just a Christmas tree effect of everything that kind of goes under tacos there. So I'm with you. I'd have to go tacos because I could eat Mexican food just about every night.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good.
Yes, cheese dip. You had no idea. All right,
No, I didn't.
yeah, it's a thing. Favorite place ever visited, and you said Scotland. Yeah, it's kind of right there. It gets you in the heartstrings. Scotland does, huh?
It does. It really does. If I've had like a couple glasses of wine and someone asks me about Scotland, I actually get emotional. Which I think is partly because, again, we keep returning to this theme of like travel and trips and stuff, but I had travel planned. I have a lot of friends there that I haven't been able to see in a long time, so I think that is part of it. But I think that Scotland, this is going to sound like so cheesy, but there's so much history there. The nature is beautiful, and it's hard not to feel, if you go particularly up north past the more populated areas, if you go into the Highlands, it's difficult not to feel like there's something going on there, like something mythical, mystical, or at least you feel like the weight of this history. And these like huge misty rolling hills and beautiful water. And it's like cold and gray a lot of the time, which normally I don't like. It's a very rainy day here right now, but there is something sort of like moody and mysterious about it.
I just like the name, the Highlands. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, it's just so we went to Ireland a few years back, and that was cool. We rented a car and I drove, which was mind-numbingly difficult. But we saw the castles and just got out and saw all the history there. And I mean, we visited a bar in Galway, and the bar had been there since like the 1700s or something ridiculous. And you're like, wow. I mean, like I said, my town of 60,000 people has been here for like 100 years. I mean, ridiculous. So I agree with you on that. I think it's super cool. We're going back to London in a few months, and I don't know if we'll make it to Scotland or not, but I definitely would love to go there.
Yeah, no, and the people, it was like a big thing when I was 18 and moved, and I was so nervous and scared to be, I think in general, when you go to college or when you leave home for the first time, it's like maybe scarier than you like to admit. And I went so far away and I was so nervous about being in this new place. And the people are just incredibly nice and so like expressive and warm and welcoming, which makes a big difference. And also, we'll talk about this more a little bit later, but Scottish food is really misunderstood and undervalued. The food is delicious and the produce is amazing.
Yeah, they make good scotch, right? No, I'm just kidding.
They do. It's its own food group there.
It is its own food. It's like tacos, right? You just dive right in.
Yeah.
All right, and then the bucket list place you want to go. So tell us about that.
New Zealand. I think I want to go to New Zealand for a few reasons. Again, the nature and the beauty seems to be really incredible. And also the food. I mean, it's all the same themes, but I think that the food scene there seems to be really amazing. And it also just seems like a nice place to be. I don't know. I definitely put New Zealand on some sort of pedestal that I don't know is real, but it seems like a really idyllic, nice place.
It happens, Yeah, I think New Zealand would be awesome. I think it would be just an amazing thing. So, I mean, along with what you were saying about the nature, I mean, of Scotland, New Zealand, whatever it is, to me, and my wife really feels this way too. It's like once you get there and you're in the middle of this, amazing natural sight, I mean, it just kind of takes everything away and makes you realize, I'm so small, and everything else is so massive. It's so beautiful. So no, I get it. I think that's awesome. I really do. All right. Well, so you survived. You're on the fly questionnaire there. I do. I think you did a good job. I hit you with some hard things for Thursday, but you succeeded. You did great. So now we're going to dive in to the second part of the podcast here and really just a little bit more about you. So starting off with, what's your first food memory? Like very first one, like jar of baby food, or what you got?
Very first one. I do remember, I mean, you said baby food. And
Get out of town. You don't remember eating baby food.
I don't know that I remember it or that I have like a hazy kind of like flavor memory. Like I really loved prune baby food, like past when I was a baby.
You're like, last week I just polished off the last jar in the fridge.
I mean, it's like a good healthy snack. Like those pouches. I don't eat baby food
I didn't
anymore,
expect that at all.
But you know what's funny is that those pouches that are like fruit snacks that they market for like athletes, like you work out and they have like those pouches that you can have for like cyclists and stuff. It just is baby food repackaged for adults.
It is, yes. Yeah, I mean, they did the same thing with diapers back in the day, so it's awesome. I think you're right there. They've literally taken baby food and put it into a pouch and said, hey, look at this. We can mark it up 70% now and sell it to athletes. Just sugar in a pouch.
All right, so but I'll say more seriously what my earliest food memories are. They are in Sweden, which is where my dad grew up. And when I was a kid, we would go back every summer and spend some time there with my family. And I think one of my earliest food memories, she's my great aunt. We would go over to her house and she would make waffles with cloudberry jam and whipped cream. And she like consummate.
You have to stop there. What is a cloudberry?
A cloudberry is a little orange berry. It grows on bushes in colder climates.
I thought you were going to say it grows on clouds. That was wait. All right. So orange berry in bushes in colder climates. Okay.
Yeah, it's really good. It's I mean, like a lot of fruit, I feel like that gets turned into jam. It needs a lot of sugar to taste.
So it's a little more tart.
Yeah, it's a little bit more tart and it's a little bit more like muted in flavor. It isn't as like tangy or sharp as like a raspberry or something like that. It maybe it's like more similar to a gooseberry or something like that.
Yep. That makes sense here.
Yeah. But I remember sitting at that table and my aunt, she would never sit down. She would just be constantly like churning out waffles, like really like a grandma figure in terms of how she was hosting. And she would be like, you look hungry. You've had 6 waffles. Here's another, and the whipped cream and the berries. And just, I think partly the food, but also so many of us who end up working in food, we have a moment like that where it's like, you're around the table, right? And you see you're with your family and the food is the anchor and it just is like a warm feeling. And then we end up spending our whole careers chasing that same feeling.
That's right. Yes. You're like, if I could just get back to the grandmother time with the cloudberry jam and the whipped cream. Yeah. And it's like you're just chasing down the rabbit hole there. You never find it, and if you do, you're like, but it wasn't quite that. I gotta find a better one.
Yeah.
Well, that's more the answer I expected instead of prune baby food, but I liked it. That was great. You got me on that one. All right. So what part of cooking, culinary, working in a restaurant, when was it where you were like, hey, you know what? I love working with food, but I want to take a step outside the kitchen and be involved in a much different scope than just being a line cook there, or even going the chef route or restaurant tied to a restaurant?
Yeah. When I was a kid, I started probably dabbling in the kitchen when I was like 11 or 12, like seriously cooking and like watching cooking shows and learning and practicing techniques and stuff. And I definitely, for a few years, I was like, I'm going to become a chef. This is it. This is so obvious. And started thinking about that. And when I was 19, but I ended up going to college but spent all my extra time doing culinary stuff. And the summer that I was 19, I think it was before my first and second years of college, I was working at Haleo at a location in Maryland in Bethesda that is now closed. And it was so hard. It was so hard. It was a kitchen that I just felt really uncomfortable in terms of just like the environment and the culture. And it was just a very challenging place to be. And I think that I am glad that I experienced it, because I think that if I hadn't done that, I would have gone to culinary school and I would have like learned later that it wasn't going to be for me. But it was after that that I was like, I really like restaurants and I like the environment and I like the energy of it and I love food, but like what else exists out there where maybe I would be able to take care of myself a little bit better, that wouldn't be quite as intense. So it was really after that first job that I was like, let me do some poking around and see what else might be out there.
Well, how wise and intuitive of you, because many of us go out and say, all right, well, I want to be a chef, or you fall into it and you say, well, I'm going to cook. And then you end up, if you're halfway punctual, then you can climb the ladder a little bit and make it through the reins there. But it's like, you get out and you start doing it and you look back and you're 10 years in and you go, wow, I've learned a lot about cooking, but I really hate being in the kitchen. What do I do now? So I think it's cool that you were able to see that at a younger age and go, hey, this is great. I love the restaurant scene. I love hospitality. I love feeding people and being around that. But there's a whole nother side to this. Kudos for you for seeing that, because I didn't see that. I had blinders on and just like went all the way through. But I think it's awesome just because, just like Manny, I mean, to be a USDA, I mean, how cool is that? I mean, that's awesome. But I never would have thought of that ever. I mean, it's amazing the opportunities that are out there for people like us who love food and love to be involved in it. They're just growing day by day, and I think it's great. All right, so favorite summer drink and favorite winter drink. And this could be anything. It could be water, or it could be, a single malt scotch, whatever you want. It could be anything. So it's a very broad question, and I'll give you 1 second to think about it.
Okay. 1 second. My favorite, I'm going to say a favorite year-round drink. Because it's a timeless, which is a dirty vodka martini with blue cheese olives.
Wow. Okay. All right. I like it. You were right on there too. You were like, hey, I got it. I don't even need a second.
When you said, my mind immediately went to martini, and then you said it could be water, and I was like, oh, should I?
You're like, yeah. I mean, it only sustains life. It's fine though. The dirty martini wins. All right. I love it. Good for you. Okay.
Yeah. It's it's year round. It's always time for a martini. And the blue cheese olives, I know it can be divisive, like your martini garnish or whatever. And it can be hard to find a blue cheese olive at a bar or a restaurant. But when they have it, it just is so good.
The planets align. Here it comes. But I can see that. I mean, because it's refreshing, cold for summertime. Blue cheese olive could be a little heartier for wintertime. So I can see it just taking you right through the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
So 2's too many and 3's not enough. Oh, wait, no, that's the wrong way, right? All right. So tell us about your company, In the Wings. So I want to hear all about that. And on top of that, so part A is tell us about the company, In the Wings. And then part B is, what does a day in the life look like for Daisy?
Yeah. So In the Wings is a consultancy that I started in January. I had been thinking for a few years about what I wanted to do. So I started grad school at NYU in the food studies program in 2019. I was working while I was in school, doing food PR, communications, and marketing stuff. And then in school was learning about our food system. And I ended up focusing a lot on food and gender, and particularly in the hospitality industry, why it's, how gender shows up in restaurant environments in particular? Why is it that the majority of restaurant workers are women now? 52% are women, but once you start looking at leadership statistics, it's different. Only 7% of restaurant kitchens in this country are led by women chefs. So what's happening to all of the women between when they start working and 15, 20 years down the line? And I also started thinking about what was like my role as someone who doesn't work in kitchens but works with kitchens. What can I do to sort of like investigate that, or I don't know, kind of push progress forward in general? And so I was thinking about all that stuff while I was in school, and then finished in December, and it was like, all right, I need to actually, bleep or get off the pot. I need to like actually set things in motion. And now for me personally, it was like a good time to try. I generally am pretty risk averse, and the idea of starting my own business, like still I can see like my shoulders are raising. It like still makes me nervous.
A little stressful.
It still makes me nervous, but I was like, now is the time. I don't have kids yet. I don't I am fortunate that my husband has a very stable job. So I could go for it. And I wanted to set up a marketing and communications consultancy that really is focused on or prioritizes women in food and minority voices in food. So I offer services that kind of run the gamut, everything from digital marketing and social media to more traditional public relations. I am working now. We're talking about restaurant openings. I just can't quit restaurant openings. I am working on a restaurant opening here in Brooklyn in a month or two. And then I also am working with a food writer and a culinary creator who has a cookbook coming down the line. And then also hoping to onboard a couple more projects. But it's been good so far. It's a lot of like learning about the business side of things and proposals and scopes and accounting and all of that kind of thing. I hope to get
that we restaurant people aren't very good at.
It's hard. It's interesting. I feel like when you tell me if you feel the same thing, but it's like once you get to kind of like, or when you have your own businesses or a leadership or a management position, it's like how much of your time do you spend on like running the business and like managing and leading, and then how much doing the actual work?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely, if you're in a leadership position, so I've never owned my own restaurant, but I've been executive chef for many, and it's difficult because you have to juggle. I kind of, the way I always put it was, all right, I spend, 75% of my time managing the business from every standpoint, food cost, ordering, managing people, which is like the easiest part of it, of course, right? But then the other 25% is like, all right, now how do I actually dive in and make this business better? And really that's like 23%. Then 2% is like, how do I make myself better? Because if I'm pushing everything I know and that I've learned over the past X amount of years, and now I have to constantly put things in to put things out. If I want to teach these people, I've got to constantly teach myself. And it's very difficult as a business owner, as a executive chef, as a management role. I mean, it's a hard position to be in because you have to constantly motivate people, lift people up, make them feel good about what they're doing. Yet you have to be that constant word of, hey, this is what we should be doing. This is what's right. This is what's it's not an easy task, that's for sure.
What do you do to like fill up your cup, I guess, for a lot? Because I feel like one of the things that like I'm always just talking about with my therapist is that you can't pour from an empty cup, and I think in client, whether you're working with clients or with guests or with a team, it can be so emotionally draining. So what do you do to make sure that you are sort of like staying okay when so much of your job is giving to other people?
I go in the walk-in and cry. No, I've only done that once or twice this week. No, it's honestly, that's a great question. I think it's difficult. I think a lot of people in the industry struggle with that because you put so much in, whether it be to your restaurant, to your staff, to both, to the menu, to the food, because you're in there cooking, your hands-on doing it because, somebody called out or whatever happens and the lights come on, and the place still runs, so you have to do it. And I think that's, honestly, there's all joking aside, I think that may be why there's so many just like addiction issues in the industry, or you turn to drugs or alcohol or whatever it may be, because that's a temporary fill of the cup, right? It makes the cup not be there. Kind of like the Matrix, there is no cup now, right? Because that has kind of filled that space. But to be healthy with it, I think you have to find hobbies. You have to knit. You have to work out. You have to be around people you love that are going to fill that cup up anyway, whether it be your husband, whether it be my wife and my kids, whether it be, Hamish, who loves you on a Tuesday. And, so I think it just, you have to find those things that make you feel good. And it's not, I don't think it's a prescription out there. Everybody's so different.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
How did this turn into you interviewing me? This is not how it's supposed to go.
I think that, but also thinking about your original question, I think that like restaurant operators and people who are working in food and trying to like write cookbooks or launch their own businesses or things like that, my job is to sort of take a piece of what they're working on like off their plate, like take marketing, PR, communications, brand, take it off their plate so they can focus on operating and growing and their teams and things like that. Like that's always how I've thought about it, is sort of like being a brand therapist or something like that. It's like, what are so you can focus on operating, what can I take away from you? Just to make things a little bit more straightforward. I think, I love working with people who are launching projects, who are growing, things like that. But it does mean that like small teams don't have the bandwidth. And so I think that is also part of what I enjoy about my job, is just like being there as part of the team as things are getting going and helping in that way. And particularly for people in the restaurant industry who maybe don't have the kind of support, minority voices, queer people, women, things like that, people who have a harder time, for example, accessing funding, or things like that. I think, how can I help them, whether it's with my fee structure or with the services that I offer or things like that? How can I, help restore a little equilibrium, I guess?
Well, getting in on the ground floor like that is so much, I don't want to say easier because that's the wrong term, but it's more beneficial in your role as a consultant, because to walk into a restaurant, let's say, lack of a better, term here, like the Restaurant Impossible, Bar Impossible, that thing where you come into a failing restaurant and have to dig everything out from the ground up. Now you, as a consultant from the opening side of things, you can say, hey, we're going to set this up properly and do this the right way. And so it's also different from coming in and seeing a failing restaurant and asking, hey, what can I do to help? Because you really have to dive in there and figure it out, because they're not going to be able to tell you. So you being on the ground floor like that is much better. I love that. I love that you're able to come in and really think things through of how can I better assist these people, whatever it may be. I think that's really cool. And I think it's definitely a thing that needs to be out there, because we as culinary people are so quick to just say, I got it, I can do it, I'm going to tough it out and whatever. And that's not the case. Most of the time you need help. I mean, it's just how it is. So good for you for being able to start that and do that. I love that. I think it's really, really fun. And it sounds like you really have a passion for it as well.
Yeah, I do. I didn't, in a million years, I never thought I would be starting my own business, but that just is how life is, right?
Absolutely it is. Yes. Yeah. Wait till you're 42. That's where I am right now. Like I got all sorts of stuff happening. So you got Sweden, Turkey, Scotland, DC, New York. So I'm not going to pit any of those against each other this time, but how have all those places formed your passion for food and your passion for the people behind the food?
Each of the places that I have been lucky enough to live in have such strong food cultures. And I think whether it's living there or visiting them, I think that since I was a kid, it was like, people have their things that they like to do when they travel or when they're learning about a new place, right? They go to museums, they walk around, they see a show. And for me, it is food. Food is the place, is the way, is always like my number one activity or number one thing I want to do when I'm learning about a new place, because there is, what you're alluding to, there is that kind of like intimacy there. It's someone preparing something for you. And that kind of interaction, I think, tells you so much about a place and tells you so much about its history, And so I think that food, and it's delicious and fun, right?
Yeah.
You said that, your first love was eating. My first love
Yes.
also was eating. So it's, and I think that as I got older and started working in the restaurant industry and with the restaurant industry, it sort of didn't make a lot of sense to me that something that was this industry is about producing memorable experiences and about hospitality and about making people feel welcome, but the people who are working in it aren't treated that way. They aren't treated like their guests. And that was so, it was an eye-opening experience when I was a teenager and trying to figure out my career, to be like, how is this thing that has like really underpinned my whole childhood and been such like a rich and rewarding hobby has this like dark underbelly.
It does too.
And I think that it does all over the world. It in school, one of the things that I asked was like, is it better? Is restaurant kitchen culture better in somewhere like Scandinavia or Sweden, where they have a lot of like federal infrastructure in place to support workers? And the answer was like, yes and no. Part of it just seems to be this culture, as you said, of not asking for help and kind of pushing things down, and the idea that it's like supposed to be hard and supposed to be difficult and kind of punishing. But I think to go from a place of like, as a kid, discovering like, wow, I love food, there's so much to learn here, there's so much richness and so much just like pleasure, and then to get to a place professionally chasing that cloudberry jam dream and feeling, and then being like, wait, what actually is going on here? I think that is where the love of food came from, and then sort of where it ended up with thinking a little bit more deeply about the people who are making it.
There is a disconnect between the grandmother making the waffles with the cloudberry jam and the whipped cream, who enjoys it, wants you to eat, wants to be on her feet making waffles for the entire family, and wants to do it all because she gets so much joy out of seeing her family. And like you said, being around the table, being in the kitchen, wherever it may be. And then the flip side of that is I have this 23-year-old washout who doesn't give two craps about waffles and cloudberry jam, but it's just how he's making a paycheck. There's a disconnect there. And I think you're onto something there, to try to find that, and how can those food service workers, hospitality workers find that? Because I had a coworker tell me once, you'll be successful in the business if you treat everybody like they're cold, tired, and hungry, and just warm them up, fill their belly, make them feel good. But where does that cold, tired, and hungry cook? Where do they find that? Just like we talked about, how do you fill your cup there? So kudos to you for thinking all that through, and at a young age too. Gosh, I was thinking about how I can pass culinary school when I was 20, not anything about anything else. Goodness gracious. So I see a bright future for you. Well, okay, so this brings us to the mystery basket part of the show. So I'm going to be transparent to the audience here. Typically, I just throw this out there and the guest has no idea, but Daisy and I talked a little bit ahead of time, and I'm going to have her walk through something with us. So since she's lived in so many places, Scotland being one of them, I want to ask her about haggis. And so for those of you who don't know what haggis is, I'm going to have Daisy explain it. And then once you turn your lip up at it, I'm going to have her tell us why it's so great and what she's done in the past with that. So take it away, Daisy. Tell us all about haggis from Scotland.
Well, thank you. And I love that you are already anticipated that people are going to think it's disgusting.
Oh, it's going to happen. People are like, gross, I'm turning this podcast off. I'm done.
Haggis, if you are looking for a publicist, I am available. So haggis is a traditional Scottish dish. It has been around for centuries, for a very long time, and it originated, I believe, I don't know the specifics of the history and the origin story, so don't quote me, but originally it was a very inexpensive dish, so something that was accessible with ingredients that were around, that could feed a lot of people for not that much money. So what it is it, you can think about it as sort of like a large format sausage, honestly, is the best way to think about it. And so all of these ingredients, typically like lamb meat and organ meat, gets ground together with oats, another Scottish staple, and different like spices, flavorings, herbs, vegetables, things like that. And then it gets put into a casing. The traditional casing is, I think it is either the intestine of like a sheep's intestine or the lining of a stomach. Those things in the United States I think are not legal. So here, if you're buying haggis here, it just isn't an artificial casing. And it comes in sort of almost like a football shape. And also there are now vegetarian versions available. So if you're scared and you want to start with like a baby version, there's it's just as oats and vegetables and mushrooms and things like that in the same kind of casing.
They don't take like the carrot organs or anything like that, like the vegetable organs.
The carrot, celery, mushroom organs.
Yes, let me just go back just a few seconds to when you said organs. Tell people what organs would typically go in there.
Oh, I don't know specifically. I think probably it varied depending on what was available, if we're looking back in the day. But then I think also all your classics, heart, liver, lungs, things like that, which we here in the States and in the West are like not that comfortable with, but also thinking about like sustainability. And if you are a meat eater, it's great to eat more of the animal. So
there goes
I'm an
the
advocate.
Lip turn right there. I saw it. I saw it across the podcast land when you said lungs and organs. So like, oh man, but you're right. I make jokes, but I mean, it is, we can't just have beef tenderloin all the time. I mean, there's other parts of the animal. And so go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No. It's true. I think it just is like a cultural thing. It's how our taste gets formed. Really, it's not that different than a sausage. And also it isn't like, there's a lot of other stuff in there, like vegetables and oats and things like that. So it really is not, like a giant like meat organ ball.
Haggis, I'm out there for a publicist if you need me, because a meat organ ball is what Daisy's throwing at you here. So fantastic.
My interview isn't going very well with the haggis board. But all that's to say that it is delicious. It's like the texture is really good. And the way that you prepare it is that there's a couple ways you can do it, but essentially you wrap it up super tightly in foil, and then you either steam it or boil it in its little foil house for a few hours until it's like warm and cooked through, and then you eat it. You can, traditionally you pair it with, I can also hear everyone laughing, you pair it with neeps and tatties, which are turnips and potatoes.
Neeps and tatties. All right, I like it. Turnips and potatoes.
And then also like love a whiskey sauce. Like I think this is maybe not super traditional, but to add a little bit of like texture and something to bring all this stuff together on the plate, like a cream sauce made with scotch.
Cool.
What's not to love?
I mean, really, neeps and tatties, and some lungs and organs, and some stomach lining. I mean, it sounds fantastic to me. Let's do it. No, I think that's really, it's one of those dishes that you're right. If you've never had it, you're just going to be like, oh, what? But at the same time, it was readily available. It was there. Hey, let's use every part of this animal. And because, you have a village to feed, you have a family to feed, you have whatever, and you have all these bits and pieces, and you have the nips and tatties, and you have all the things. And so, hey, why not? Let's put it together. And it turned into this staple dish that is so well known and so not well known flavor wise here in the States, I'm sure. Because, like you said, a lot of those things we don't cook with here. But also, I think people have, like, when you say liver, they think liver and onions. They think like, what people do here. And it's like that's not quite the taste. And
Yeah.
it's such a rich flavor too. It's like, I mean, it's not like you're having French fries, right? It's not going to be that. It's a little more so it wouldn't be something you eat every day, right? It wouldn't be like I'm having haggis Monday through Friday and then I'll have some French fries on the weekends.
No, I'm trying to think. It's like, we're not going to have Thanksgiving dinner every day here. Like we're not eating turkey,
Right.
every day or even every week. It's like one of the more traditional foods. You can still find it. It's on a lot of like menus. If you go out to eat at like a classic Scottish restaurant, it'll be on menus. And I recommend ordering it next time you're in Scotland. But it's definitely not anymore an everyday food, more an occasion or a once in a while.
That's awesome. No, I definitely, once I get to Scotland, that'll be definitely on the list of things I have to scratch off there. Maybe I'll be having a glass of whiskey or scotch, I'm sorry, in the Highlands while I'm eating haggis. And that'll be a great Instagram post right there, wouldn't it?
The dream.
Yeah,
The dream.
that's the ultimate selfie right there with the camera. Like, yeah, look at me here. Yeah. Hey, Daisy, I really appreciate your time. I hope you've had a great time on Chefnpodcast. We've enjoyed having you here. We as in me. I don't know why I always say we, but wish you all the successes in your budding career here in the wings. So tell people where they can find any information about In the Wings.
So the website is www.inthewings.co. So inthewings.co.
Cool. All right. So anybody out there looking for some help in this amazing industry, give Daisy a shout. Hey, Daisy, thanks again. Hope you enjoy your Thursday. Happy St. Patty's Day to you. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Daisy.